Well, this is Sarah with the Fairmont City Garden. And our heat wave down in the St. Louis area finally broke, the last week in July. So we're able to actually get tomato fruit to produce. 100-degree temperatures isn't always great for our vegetables. But otherwise, from the Master Gardener perspective, everything is going well. Continue to harvest. Haven't seen too many bug issues either this year. And at the end of July, our SNAP staff person came and did a presentation with the kids on a vegetable pizza that they can make at home using the peppers that they primarily harvested in July.
That's great. Yep. Weather makes all the difference in the world, doesn't it?
It sure does.
I don't know.
Maybe more rain down this way.
What's that? I'm sorry.
We could use some more rain now.
Yeah,
that's my next complaint.
For us too. And I think as the other groups start, we may hear that they wish it would quit raining so much, from what I can see. So yeah, I don't know. And that is one of those things. I don't know. Again, sort of back to the survey. I don't know if that's a crucial thing that we should ask you all, as in how was the weather conditions. Maybe that isn't something that we necessarily need, but that is I hadn't really thought about that, and maybe that's part of it too. But at any rate, so thanks, Sarah. Is there something else also with your garden, Sarah? Or nope. Okay, good. So Brenda, do you want to?
Sure, I can report on the Harvard Garden. Actually, Mondays are their work days, so I can't give you the most up to date. But we did have, well, our garden has a little side connection, and it's a preschool group that comes out. They actually go back to they start regular school this year or this week. So they had a parent night the week before. And it's in the evening. This is a primarily Hispanic preschool. And the parents come out in the evening. The preschool brings the kids out, and they have stations set up so that the kids can take their parents around and show them what they've been learning. So they have a little story time. They make little refrigerator pickles. They take them literally out in the garden and let the parents harvest that evening and take stuff home for them. So that was kind of cool. And that's it.
Okay, great. Next. Anybody?
Sandy, this is Chris.
Hi, Chris.
I can give an update on the Macomb Garden.
Okay.
Things are going well. We're up to about, for our first year, 230 pounds that we've donated. That was last week, and this week we're pulling out one bed to put in some fall crops. And we've just been doing, primarily focusing, I'm doing educational sessions throughout the last couple of weeks. So now we're going to talk about fall crops, and we've got some started in some trays. And so this is mostly education sessions on the side for the Master Gardeners as we learn more about how we're going to be growing this garden and so on. We did have a session planned with the Hy-Vee dietitian to come out and make a couple meals and invite the public out. Unfortunately, the day before, as we tried to get a hold of her, she forgot about the program, and so we're just we'll cancel that, I guess. So that was unfortunate, but other than that, we're still doing fairly well. The weather's perfect right now for gardening, and the Master Gardeners, they really have enjoyed this new project. They feel like they're really contributing back to the community in a different way than they had before.
Okay, great. Oh, great. That's the kind of thing we love to hear. So, yeah. Okay, good.
I just joined the meeting. I don't know what's going on, but I think maybe it's a convenient point to join. Good morning, everybody. Okay, this is Akinwale calling.
Okay, hi, Akinwale.
Yes.
And you're just in time to talk about the Macomb gift garden.
Right. So I got the list of the number of food pantries that benefited from the donations from the gift garden in time past. So I made a contact with some of them, and I have different appointments set up with them. Last week, was it Thursday? Last week Thursday, I was at the Colchester Food Pantry, which is one of the food pantries that benefited from the fresh produce from the gift garden. So I did a NEFPAT assessment, which is a food pantry assessment there, and I'm coming up with the reports. I plan to see them this week to give them the reports and our recommendation. And so I also have an appointment tomorrow with the Loaves and Fishes Food Pantry, which is another food pantry in Macomb that have benefited from the stuff. So what I'm trying to do is to do the food pantry assessment like we planned, and also make recommendations and see how some of these things can be utilized in a good way for the people that need them.
Okay, because it sounded like in your area you had quite a few food pantries.
Yeah, we have like 5 though, but it's just about 3 of them that do the shopping style. So of course it's easier to make recommendations and changes with the food pantries that give the shopping style, where people can have the opportunity of shopping what they want and picking what they want, unlike other food pantries that have everything packaged and hand it over to them, not asking their opinion. You understand what I mean? So we can have more impact as for the recommendations and for the assessments and for the technical assistance in the food pantries that give the clients opportunities to pick what they want. So those are the ones that I can easily work with to try to see how we can effect changes in the food pantry that will help people to make healthy choices.
Right. Yeah, it makes a big difference, doesn't it? You can pick. Okay, good. And then I think Amelia and Dominique, I think, are both on for the PAEC.
Hi, good morning. This is Amelia. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. So just by way of a very quick little update on the PAEC School Garden out here in North Cook County, for July 2017, I can give you some totals because I was just looking at the numbers. So we finally had some vegetables to harvest, and it was not a huge harvest because we have had a few insect issues. So 2.5 ounces of kale that was distributed to students, again, a very small amount, but we gave it to the student who was most excited about kale, and what we did is made sure that everybody got a chance to taste it, and we also used that opportunity to talk about less than perfect produce and how it could still be edible so long as you actually clean it properly, and there's not too much damage. So that was a nice little learning opportunity. For herbs have been our major component of our harvest. So we've got 5.6 pounds of herbs for July. Yeah, we did get quite a bit, and again, the students were pretty interested in them, and I know that the SNAP ed person who was out there working in the school was actually making use of them as much as possible also in the workshops. For Total Youth that we worked with, and again, this is part of a summer camp program, 62 youth for the summer, so that was throughout July, and it went through that first week in August. So what I'm doing right now is I'm in talks with school administrators, figuring out what we can do to keep the garden going as we transition into the actual school year. Again, knowing that the pilot program continues until September 30th. Right now, I've been in contact with one of the science teachers who's taken on the most active role in the garden, and so we're looking to work with 2 of her classes during the school day, approximately 10 in the morning until noon, once a week. And then I know that the person who is running the summer camp is also interested in starting a gardening/nutrition club as part of the after-school programming that's offered. So that's something else that I'm getting some insight into and figuring out how Master Gardeners can assist with that by way of keeping the garden going. Our biggest challenge right now is that the school itself is going through a transition in leadership. They just hired a new principal. The teachers are having an institute week this week, and hopefully we'll have a final schedule hopefully by Thursday when I meet with them again, so we can start to solidify plans for continuing our work with the garden.
Okay, great. Oh no, that's wonderful. And actually, we got to encourage the kids that if you find any kid that likes kale,
I know.
that's fabulous.
Yeah, it was a
hard.
thing.
Yeah, I'm impressed with the 5.6 pounds of herbs because, when you have a lot of that leafy stuff, it's hard to add up pounds. That was one of the reasons on the surveys we really wanted to, have it, separated. So, 5 pounds of herbs is a lot. 5 pounds of tomatoes, it's a lot easier to get up there to 5 pounds. So.
Well, we've been planting, most of what's planted in that garden right now are herbs, and you'd be surprised how much chives are actually...
Way?
Yes, very much, yeah.
Oh, good. Well, good to know. Chives way more. Okay, good. Well, it looks like a lot of things are happening there as well, so that's good. So I think we just have one more. So Decatur, I think Candace is on, and
yeah, I'm on. I see Beth is on, so I'll let her share too. But we're finally getting rolling at the Decatur Correctional Facility. I think last week was our first donation of 69 pounds, which we were we were pretty excited about that. So, Beth, do you want to share any details?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I'm joining late. There were 69 pounds, and we thought that was pretty awesome.
Fabulous.
I know. They were mostly tomatoes, some cucumbers, green peppers, basil. Let's see, zucchini. Of course, zucchini can weigh quite a lot, but they were nice-sized zucchinis. They hadn't gotten out of control. We have a schedule set up for the produce to be picked up once a week on Tuesdays, and then delivered to the food pantry on Wednesday, and that's the plan for now. We might have to increase it to twice a week, but we're just kind of waiting to see. The women have watched the video, the food safety video from Iowa State.
Okay.
And, I'm going to be going out there later today to see how the gardens look and things like that. So things are looking good. The women are excited about being part of a larger community effort, and I think that's one of the unspoken benefits for this group anyway, for them to feel part of a larger project is really nice for them.
Oh, that's great. That's good. I was going to ask you how they kind of felt about, because in the past, had the produce actually been going to, how was it used in the past? In the past, it was really hit and miss. Harvest was very hit and miss. They were very upset that some of the produce actually just rotted on the vine last year because they weren't, for whatever reason, there was a period of time they weren't allowed to go out to harvest. And they're, it just, I don't know, it fell through the cracks. It wasn't important enough. Other produce is just given to staff, and staff have kind of gotten used to just being able to just have the produce to go out and pick and whatever they want and whenever they want and for their personal use. And so they have had to kind of go through a little bit of a learning process to also that it's not theirs for the taking, I guess, and they're pretty on board with it. They've been very supportive so far. So good. So it sounds like you've really started that framework where they do feel like, again, it's part of a bigger, for the staff as well as the folks that are there. So.
Yeah, and so, and I think they're still planning, hopefully, to have a little bit, somewhat, to share at least the herbs in a broader way. Well, at the correctional center, to have fresh herbs for at least 1 or 2 meals, but realistically, it's just not possible for them to grow enough food right now for over 600 inmates. So this is a great way to use it. They really appreciate it. They really appreciate that and being part of the program. And the pantry, that was, so far, it's kind of a preliminary selection for it, but it's been it's nearby, so it's also really local community. They like that.
Okay, great. And then Stacy, I think you're on. Did you have any comments about kind of on your end of the SNAP-Ed?
Not too much. Luckily for me, Macon County was also participating in a project on the SNAP-Ed side called NECE, and part of that was conducting NFPATs in the community. So a NFPAT was already done on this pantry. However, it was before I started in this role. So now I'm just trying to make the connection with the person who is running the pantry to try to go over the results of the NFPAT that the campus staff did a few months ago. So hopefully I'll get that rolling here pretty soon, and then I can get some staff in there to do direct ed.
Okay, great, good. Thank you very much. So thank you all. I think we got, unless anybody has any other comments about one of their gardens. I think we'll go ahead and jump right into the Qualtrics monthly survey. And this is, it is one of those things. It's evolving, as you all know. Again, why we ask all these questions of, and I know I've said this before, but just to sort of frame, what we're doing now with this Qualtrics survey is that we really want it to ask the questions that we really want the information from. We just don't want to have this be busy work for you all, and then eventually for other groups that do this project. So please, you're not going to hurt our feelings any if you just say, like, I don't understand why you're asking this question, or I don't understand the question, or we're really trying to make this simple yet get the information that we all want. So Maddie, do you want to go ahead and run through the survey and we can go from there?
Hello, everyone. So we made some changes this month actually, all the changes we made were based off of your surveys from last month. So that's why you haven't seen a July survey yet in your mailbox. So going through, you can just jump right in. So most of the changes were on the Master Gardener side. There were some on the SNAP. So this question, okay, so on one of the problems with the last survey is that there were just zeros or blanks. And we really wanted to stress this month that instead, if you don't know, like if you don't know how many pounds, just put a question mark, because it will allow you to do that. That way we know you didn't have that number available to you. Or if you did know and you just didn't produce any pounds on month, please put a 0. This way we know that is the answer and you're just not sure, because we had some blanks and we weren't sure if you didn't know the answer or you didn't have any at all, which is fine. That's why we're doing.
And I think last month it actually was worded a little bit different, didn't we? Say like total pounds grown or something like that, mm-hmm. Which I thought maybe that's a little bit confusing. What we were trying to get at is how much are you actually producing off of these gardens, but yet for one reason or another, either it's unusable or it's just, like the insects got to it or whatever, or it was past its prime or whatever. And that harvested produce, as in, some of it is going to staff, some of it, those kind of things. So again, that may not be a number because staff are walking out there and grabbing, or you feel like they're going out there and maybe harvesting some of it. So again, maybe that ends up being a question that we don't end up asking again, simply because we just don't know. So if we constantly get question marks on that one, then that one may just go away once we finish with the pilot. But I just sort of a framework there.
Yeah, I have a feeling that that's actually a number that's hard to capture because, like you said, you don't know who's out there harvesting when you're not.
Right. So that one, so is that kind of your feel? So maybe we don't need to necessarily know that. We were just trying to get a better idea. But yeah, I wonder about that too. So
yeah. Plus, if you're talking about also figuring out unusable produce, I mean, what are you going to? It's kind of seems like a waste of energy to harvest that stuff and then take it over and weigh it and then go clean out the bin so that you can put the good stuff in there again.
Good point. Yeah, how do you weigh that unusable? Okay, very good point. See, that's one of those things that we just don't think about, or I just don't think about. Okay, so yeah, good point, because then suddenly you have the stuff Yeah, because you've had to weigh it. Yeah. So maybe that's also not an important point. I don't know. Okay, so thank you for the feedback on that. So Maddie, do you want to go ahead and
Okay, so one of the things I wanted to point out is that last month someone put they put okra, so we actually added that this month. It's not updated up here for some reason though, but I did add it. And so my point of that is I really appreciate you putting in if you're growing something that's not featured on the list, we can add it. So good job to that. Okay, so continuing on. So we added a new question, and it's the top page, and it's how many participants / audience are working in the garden. And we wanted to get a better idea of who your audience is. So you have a question of how many master gardeners and volunteers are working, and those are people who are actually like doing the work, but this question was designed to try to figure out who are you helping or who are you teaching while gardening. Because like at Fairmont, they have students and kids from the community who come, and there's a youth spot, but they're really not like volunteering. They're part of the participants or the audience of the garden. So that's why we included this new question. So there's a difference there.
And there may be a better way to say that. Manny and I are both kind of working through Qualtrics and haven't really done a ton of stuff with it, although I think we're getting better at it. But if anybody has any comments, like, really, if we word it different, I have a different format for the question, then please let us know. And this may not be, how do we make this clear enough on this question that we're really talking about the program participants, not the volunteers necessarily, if that makes sense.
So like at Harvard, you would have however many preschoolers, that would be your students, and then you would put how many, that was supposed to be, I don't know why it's not saving apparently, but then you would have them come down here, and so if you had your students, you would put, like this last month, you would do a special event, because that was the family night where the parents came in and they showed them, if that helps make sense. But if it was, just also they just ran, like they come each week and help maintain the garden, that might be another one you select.
Yeah, but then doesn't that make them volunteers?
Yes and no. I think it's the emphasis, the layer of emphasis. So to me, the students or the folks that are coming to the Fairmont City Library or the kids that are coming to, they're different. And again, maybe if you have a better way of asking this question. So to me, there's two different layers of emphasis. The emphasis might be with master gardeners, where they're doing the production, they're maintaining, they're helping with those lessons that you do with those students or library participants. Do you see what I mean? So I really felt like there was an element that we were missing in this survey by not asking that question.
Perhaps a change of the question at the top about learning. It says are working in the garden. Maybe it's are learning from the garden.
There you go. Oh, there you go. I like that. So they're learning from the garden, or learning in the garden, or learning. Oh, yeah. See, there you go. Because I think it's, even though we know master gardeners are also learning out there, their emphasis isn't necessarily that they're learning. Okay, so good idea. So if we change that to learning instead of working, I think that'd help. Okay, great.
Okay, so the bottom two questions are the same from last month. Okay. So we added a question about the safe food handling video. A lot of you have already said, that you've been watching them, and we love hearing that. So if you could just reflect that in the survey, then we have, we know who has completed one and who hasn't. And I know a lot of you have done Iowa, but if you might have watched somebody else's, just type in who in the box, so then we have a better idea of what university is teaching the safe food handling.
Because Brenda, didn't you have one from Wisconsin, or someone had one from Wisconsin? I wasn't sure. Brenda, maybe it wasn't you. And I think we need to probably look at, again, and I know Zach has corrected me a few times on what safe food handling means. And so maybe it's more of safe harvesting, safe produce. You know, I think because safe food handling means a completely different thing, I would assume, on the SNAP-Ed end of things.
So, Sandy, yeah, this is Brenda, and that was from Wisconsin. However, when you say it's just a yes or no question, and you've got, you know, a half a dozen or a dozen volunteers, you know, if one of them watched it, if 5 of them watched it, if, you know, it's you know, if only 2 people reported that to me that they watched those videos, and I know there's 10 people out there, do I answer yes or no? You know.
Right. So I think what this is, and maybe we need to word this differently. And at this point, it'd be great if everybody involved in the garden, you know, watched these videos. That would be great. I think what we're really asking is that either maybe you have a couple of people that are chairs of the garden, the master gardeners that are chairs of that garden, or, you know, kind of the leadership. So, and then plus we would hope also that then you as a coordinator or the horticulture educator or whoever it is that's filling this out is also watched that at least sometime or other. Does that make sense? So, yeah, so maybe there's a different way of saying, you know, how do we get to that?
I mean, I saw them, but that doesn't mean that the people out in the garden did, you know.
Right. What we would hope is then that you would, but then also that maybe, you know, we have a little different system for this. You know, we're kind of playing catch up a little bit because one would hope that, you know, we do this in a little bit different time frame, as in we're talking with all of you, you know, in January and February instead of, so then you would have an opportunity that at some event that those folks who are master gardeners that are going to be involved in the garden they could all see it, you know, and together in a format. So we're playing a little bit of catch up here, but that would be the plan for the future. So again, if you have any suggestions on how we can get to that information, but right now my feeling is that it really needs to be the chairs, those master gardener chairs. So would that be better if it was a different question, or it shouldn't be a yes no? You know, should we ask have the chairs of the master gardener chairs of the volunteer group, have they watched a video?
Or how many? I don't know. How many garden volunteers have watched the video?
Yeah, we could make it a number, or the percent involved.
Well, I suppose though too, then it should also refer to a single video training. You know, did you watch a 7-minute or a 27-minute?
Right.
Might make a difference.
Yeah. Well, and again, our plan is that, and Zach Grant's been very good about, you know, he has a very long one. So we really didn't feel, and he agreed that he didn't really feel like master gardeners or folks working in the garden necessarily needed to see his full production video. So he had agreed to go ahead and do a shorter one. So yeah, then everybody be watching the same one. I was going with Iowa State because that was the one I was really familiar with. But then I think maybe Dale had said something about maybe you, Brenda, had watched this or was encouraged to watch this one in Wisconsin. So I think that's where this came from.
What do you think about changing that question format to be one of the sliding scales? Like, how confident are you that they know?
There you go. Maybe that's more it.
Safe food handling. 1 out of 10. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, that would be a good sliding scale. You're right. And could we go ahead and just say that that the Master Gardener volunteers, how confident are you that the Master Gardener volunteers are practicing safe food handling.
That's still pretty arbitrary.
That's still a pretty arbitrary. You're right. Well, again, if anybody has any suggestions on how we might do that, maybe we'll just look at a different framework. Chris, I know you've worked with Qualtrics, I think more than maybe a lot of us have. So if you have any suggestions on how we might do this, and Candace, I don't know, maybe you've also worked with Qualtrics quite a bit.
How about what percentage of your volunteers have viewed a video training?
So we could just say that, a video training.
Yeah, and then if you go by what percentage of them, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You have 30 volunteers and I have 5.
Right. So then we would know what percent of. Because then again, as we go through this, hopefully people will be more and more familiar with what those practices will be. So we could change that to what percent. Have it.
I mean, because I can track that because it's actually listed as a continuing ed for my Master Gardener volunteers. So.
Yeah. Right, absolutely. And so are you doing that now? Is it actually listed as continued ed? Because that would be...
Yes.
Okay, good. So that makes sense. And then you know exactly who would have watched that and it is part of the continued ed. Okay, good.
I think you also have to clarify, and we've kind of talked about that, is it for the garden portion or is it safe food handling after it comes from the garden? Because the thing is that you could also have volunteers that are foods sanitation certification. People might work in restaurants or whatever else that is coming out to volunteering. So that's some experience that you might want to glean at some point.
Right. So what's the proper wording here? It's not really safe food, because really what we're getting at here, because it's really Master Gardeners that are filling, the Master Gardener group or the gardening group is actually filling this part out. So what would be the proper, is it just safe food harvest, produce harvest? I mean, and I just...
safe produce handling.
Right. I think harvest should be in there a little bit.
Right. Rather than handling, harvest.
Yeah, because you're also sending this to SNAP-Ed staff to fill out.
Well, but I think this one, Maddie, correct me if I'm wrong, does this one just go to...
This is a just Master Gardener site.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I would avoid it, like any language that just says food handler training, because that gets confused, like Dale said, with like official permit, like official health department requirements.
I like safe food harvesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too, and I like that percent idea as well.
Okay, so the percent and then safe food harvesting, because that's really what we're talking about. It's handling, but it's really the harvesting process is what we're asking here. Okay. And then if we do it as a percent, I think that's good. Okay, good. Good. Thank you. So that's the end of the Master Gardener part, is that right?
Yes.
Maddie?
It is indeed. So, continue on. Okay, we had a couple of people not fill out this portion, and several who did. So I wasn't sure if there was a confusion with this setup, or if you just didn't have answers. So again, if you you don't have to put like a 0 in all of them, just like a question mark in like one of the boxes.
So this is Dominique. I didn't fill out this part because ours doesn't go to a food pantry. It's a school garden. So I didn't know what to put here because ours is, we don't do the NFPAT at a school.
Okay.
Garden.
So maybe we need a question that says like, does your food go to a school? Because that's a good question. Good point. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
or an open-ended question that says, where does your food go, might help too, because I think we also have a library and different things that might change from month to month. I don't know.
Was there a question before that, Maddie? I don't remember now.
No.
That asks that? Okay. Maybe we just talked about it.
For me, I didn't put anything the last month because I just I've not done the food NFPAT assessment then. So this month I hope I'll be able to put in some scores of what I've been able to find with the food pantries here.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, and I know, again, this is kind of, everybody's kind of working through this, so.
Yeah. And this is Amy. What I think might be helpful, since we are doing with Sarah the Fairmont Library, so maybe a separate question that follows up with this or that's ahead of this in terms of, I think you can capture probably somewhat better than a food pantry the number of kids that are going home with produce. Maybe something along the lines of kids that participate in the garden in terms of that reach factor, but distinguish those pantries, as the others have stated, that don't fall within the lines of the food pantry.
Right. Okay.
But for future, if this question remains the same, should we be putting a question mark there as for, I know the individual mentioned that for the Master Gardener one, or do we just ignore, like, don't answer the question?
I would put a question mark.
Okay, question mark again to feed into there, okay.
And then, like, a lot of them, so I've looked at everybody's program so much that, like, a lot of them, so when I went through it last month, I saw PAEC, and they didn't fill anything out, and I was like, oh, they're a school, that's why. And I didn't think anything of it, but that's a very good point that maybe we need another question, because, and just like the Fairmont, I mean, I know that the produce goes to the kids. So that was just a question for next year when we have more people filling it out. You know, should we change it? What should we do?
But also, if you've done a NEFPAT in June, I'm not going to probably do another NEFPAT in July right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially if the pantry has met most of the matrix. So I don't know, how do I answer it in July? Because I've already done it. Mm-hmm. We're doing some direct ed. You know, how do we report it, I guess?
How often do you do an FPAT? We don't, like on my end, I don't know anything about an FPAT, and so I didn't know how often.
Within 6 months, so you would do a pre-assessment, and then you could go back and do a post-assessment in 6 months. But it's not necessarily something that you just keep on doing with the pantry. So either you could just every single time answer this question yes, or it's just understood if you're working with a pantry, it's been done. I don't know, but you wouldn't. It's not something reoccurring typically.
Okay. Maybe instead of a yes/no, it should just be a date. You would put the date in for when it was completed.
Point.
That would be
that would be good.
Because like for the Harvard one, they really maxed out, and except for us doing direct ed and a little bit of messaging, there's not much more we can recommend to them because it's so nicely done.
I guess this is Beth in Decatur. I guess I had a question. If the person that's filling out the Master Gardener portion has a name who's filling out the survey, and then this is from the SNAP-Ed, and it's different, you know, it's coming from a different place, and a lot of times the Master Gardeners aren't going to have privy to this information, so how does that all come together on the same survey?
Well, this part is only, you know, if somebody clicks they're a SNAP-Ed person, then this appears for them, but it doesn't appear for the Master Gardeners. Is that, am I asking?
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, it's just the way Qualtrics works. It's just, you know, depending on what you click, depends on what you see after that, so yeah.
Okay, so Stacy gets this portion and I get the other portion.
Right.
Okay, all right.
Stacy would see this and you wouldn't. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I know it's confusing because you wouldn't have this kind of info. So maybe we need a better idea of what do we, you know, what do we really want? What's the information we really want here? I assume the information we want to know is that with the NEFPAT, if it's been done, again, a date. Is it important to ask if it's been done in 6 months, that pre-assessment? I mean, is that, again, sort of, I just don't know enough about SNAP-Ed, about what would you want to know as SNAP-Ed educators? What would you want to know from this project?
I would want to know, this is Amy, I would want to know maybe, I like the idea of a date. So the date of the pre-assessment and the date of the post-assessment, I think might be helpful. Because there is a pre and post, so it might be worth having those dates noted. Because it will maintain consistent, it'll be consistent over the period of the project, right? And then I think knowing whether there were reportable outcomes in Qualtrics, that's RN, our SNAP-Ed in, may be useful. Dale, is there some sort of alignment with Emily's work on this?
Not at this point, and
So that question may not be as relevant.
No, and I think we would want to know that if we're having direct ed and some other things that are making impact. I think my understanding was we're trying to get produce to these pantries. And so I need to set up a meeting with you, Sandy, after this, too, because I've gotten some more clarification. So next year, we're really hoping that anyone that gets the funding is really tied to a pantry.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So the thing is then we would look at that pantry. Are they on Ample Harvest maybe, and some of the other things that come out from that NEFPAT. And I think then we want to see if there's some direct ed and some impact that the produce is having to be able to report that to the USDA.
Right.
But this year, it just being a pilot, we haven't put all those parameters into it at this point. So like Amy said, a pre and a post, and maybe we want to figure out, and I think it'll be easier on pairs, how many direct eds have been done. I think we'll have more access into our, communities to know how many direct programs were done. If we did any training with the pantry people from the educator standpoint, did we do anything that's policy and environmentally related to that pantry? Other things like that. It's not a guarantee that we do all of those steps with every pantry. It just depends on what the pantry and us have discussed and where we're moving forward and other factors.
Yeah, one thing that would be relevant, I think, for here in particular would be if we're doing, because I know my coordinator's been working with Sarah to provide some direct education to the students. I'd like to know those numbers, how many kids participated in that program for that month. That would be, relevant information, as well as I think, but that would probably be more on the Master Gardener side, but for those sites like a school or Fairmont, how many families were served, or kids, if the kids went home with the produce, how many kids went home with produce, if there is an ability to track that. That's probably easier to track, quite frankly, than the pantry.
Well, I think next year we're not going to be able to do it to the schools. It is going to be tied to a pantry, and that's a discussion that we will have a little bit more. And so going forward, keep in mind that these gardens really should be tied to a pantry next year.
Okay.
And so I think the direct ed to the pantry, I don't know, we may have to come up as SNAP-Ed, a method to figure out working with the pantry if we can get a number of families that are taking that produce home. Because again, pantries could be grocery style where the client comes in and selects the food they want, or it could be, here, this is your box of food, this is what you get. Yeah. So there's a lot of variety of how pantries operate.
Yeah, keep in mind though, the produce, being able to gauge produce selected at a pantry, that produce, at least in the pantries in my area, gets put into like a standard area where other produce from food retail is coming in. So there's very few pantries I know would be willing to maybe separate that out to try to figure out, so it's probably like pantry. I think that's where the question for pantries, how many families does the food pantry serve, is probably our best piece of data specific to that than trying to get them to say, for exactly that community garden, that produce went to X amount of families. That's going to be trickier.
Correct. But what they really want to know is how many impact took more fruits and vegetables or more produce. So that's going to be maybe hard, because even if you're saying we serviced 100 families and 0 of them took any produce, that's not good data going to the USDA either. So we'll have to kind of look at some of that and do best guess estimates, and maybe have work with the pantry staff to see, is everyone taking at least some produce, or what, and get a percentage? Because that wouldn't be that. I can't talk today, but that would be very difficult to say we had 100 families, and when someone would come in to observe, and all of that produce is still there. Well, you served 100 families. Why didn't any of the produce leave? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is all to say that this is benefiting our SNAP clientele, and that they're getting more fruits and vegetables. We're trying to somehow make a correlation.
Yeah.
I just want to add this. I think from what Dale and Amy Funk have said, I think it's important we get the date of the pre-assessment for the food pantry assessment and the post-assessment date. And like she said, having 6 months in between, if I understand the purpose of these rights quite well, my understanding is that there is something they've been doing at the point we had the pre-assessment for the food pantry, and the garden is producing so and this so fresh food and vegetables available to the food pantry. Within those 6 months, we are expected to probably have been able to make up changes that will help people to use those resources and the produce well. And I think what makes it meaningful is to be able to get a data after the 6 months and say this is how they were using the food at this date 6 months earlier than now, and this is what we are having. So I think tracking the results between the 6 months of the pre-assessment and post-assessment will be a very important thing that we need to find a way around it. You get my point? Now, I was in the food pantry, not in Macomb, not in McDonough County, somewhere in Quincy of recent, and I saw the fresh foods and vegetables available on the table perishing. And I'm like, this is so much good food wasting on your table. Yeah, people are not picking it up. And of course, what the responsibility I now have is what can we do to make people use them? If this is so much for you, can we redirect it to some other food pantries that want to have something like this and are not having it? So I think, and that's where the place of the direct education, taste testing, and every other intervention or technical assistance we can make available to the food pantries, that's where they come to have meaning. And I think one thing I've got from this discussion today is that it's important not just to make general next part assessment or food pantry assessment to this food pantry at this time. It's important to try and see how we can tailor it down to the fresh food produce we're making from the garden. Okay, and see how how the direct education can be focused more on those so that we can have a better use of those produce. And so in 6 months' time, we are able to say, okay, this is how people are using the produce. I think that's what will help us to say we're working and it's meaningful and we're having results.
Right. So it sounds like those dates are particularly important. So I think that's a good change. Yeah. Okay, so we'll keep tweaking this. We'll keep tweaking this. So some good comments. So Maddie, you want to go ahead and go through the rest of it?
Okay, so this question was the same last month. Is that pretty good for categories? I mean, are we on the right track?
Longer term, to go back to what Akinwale was saying, in the event we're working with a pantry, and I guess I think other covers it, but that might be more specific to I just want to make sure I'm understanding maybe where this question's coming from, to PSE work. So for example, I've worked with a pantry, which is not unaffiliated with what I'm doing as part of this project, but where high school students came and improved shelving to allow for the produce to be angled like a grocery store to make it more visible. So that would be a PSE change that we could make after we do that pre-assessment to highlight the fresh produce. And so I would hope longer term for next year that kind of stuff would maybe be reflected in this. And like I said, the other may cover it, or was the other meant just for direct ed?
The other was just if you've been doing something else and we wanted to know about it.
Okay. Okay.
That's the thing. It's really super helpful. Because we put these categories out, and if you're like, that's not really what we did, and you want to tell us, then we know, and then we know to add something or to change it.
Okay. Yeah, like other category would be probably optimal for PSE work, or you could have a category that says PSE work, which is what we refer to as policy systems and environmental work within that space, and then you could have a default where we'd have to put in what we did.
Okay. So maybe that makes more sense to have a separate question. And you say it's PSE work?
Yeah, we refer to it as PSE work. So that's the whole, like the NEFPET, the idea of that is to help us identify things that we could do within that space to change policy systems and environments to improve the health environment, the nutrition environment in that space. So for us, we have various things that interventions and strategies we can do in a food pantry environment to promote fruits and vegetables. And it may be an environmental change, like moving fruits and vegetables more at eye level, because sometimes in pantries they're at the very bottom of shelving, or they're just not very visible. We can try to make them look a little bit more appealing in terms of their presentation. So there's things that we could do in that space that would, like Akinwale said, there's a lot of times the produce is going to rot on a shelf because people don't select it. So our job for the PSE side is to try to persuade people to take it.
So if we had a separate question that just said something like, describe the PSE work done to promote fruits and vegetables with...
That would probably be adequate, wouldn't you think, Dale?
Does that... Because that does seem like that's an important part, because we're just talking about direct ed here, and that's really not covering everything.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe separate it out.
Okay, so maybe we need a different question.
So one for direct ed and one for...
Yeah.
So that would be like...
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
Thanks.
Sure, thank you.
And then, I mean, everybody answered the per month demonstrations, so that was good. And then that's the end of the survey.
And then, since we have just a little bit more time here, do you want to go ahead and talk about the findings? Oh, you got it. Good.
Okay, findings. Okay. So, really quick, I just kind of was messing around with what the data was already telling us from last month, which I thought we already found some very interesting things. So, we didn't get a lot of pounds reported for food donated, but what was reflected in the survey, we had 100% between harvesting and then donating. So that was very exciting, and we were happy to see that, because the whole point of the question was, is something happening between the garden to the pantry? Like, are other people being included with this program, or is it just completely just with the food pantry? And then one thing that I thought was super interesting is the garden workers and their hours for June, because we had a lot of master gardeners and their hours reflected that they're really in the gardens working, but you're also including, community volunteers and youth. So it's not just solely like they're getting other people in the gardens, which I thought was fabulous to see. And then food pantries are the main place food's going, and then only garden participants, they're the other people who mostly get the food, which is good, and that's progress, and that's what we wanted to see, or had hoped to see, I guess. And then I also enjoyed seeing that 17% of the garden programs are also using that food in their demonstrations and activities with SnapEd. So I thought that was pretty cool. And that was reflected above. And then one thing I wanted to talk about was it was a scale, and we asked how the master gardeners were feeling about how their garden was going. And for the most part, people were feeling pretty positive, it was June, and we didn't honestly expect a whole lot. We didn't expect a lot of produce, but I still felt like morale was pretty high, so I thought that was great to see. And SNAP-Ed works between 1 or 4 times per month with their participants, so that was pretty cool to see. Here is a chart of how SNAP-Ed works with them. And then here is this is what I was talking about earlier with the NEFPAT. Honestly, I just figured we would make a chart and keep it on hand so we knew, which ones have completed an NEFPAT and stuff. And I mean, when I was typing them in, I was like, okay, so Decatur's is working with the prison, so I didn't really know what to expect. And then PAEC and Fairmont, I wasn't surprised that it was blank because I know you're working with people while in the garden. So that's just a little bit from last month. So we're hoping to see what July brings.
Well, we do have just a little bit of time here, but I don't want to keep you much past noon. But one of the things I was curious about was the whole fiscal management. And I was trying to get a hold of Emmy Zilko, but she's out of the office, I think, until tomorrow. But I wondered about the fiscal. Now, Amanda, I know that because the time period on this was a little weird because of the growing season and everything, that you guys needed stuff before we actually really got this going. So I was just curious because I know the unit ended up purchasing some things. So I just wanted to hear kind of your comments about maybe concerns you've had over how the fiscal kinds of things have worked or haven't worked or whatever as far as getting things purchased. And anybody have any comments on? We knew how we wanted it to work, but I wasn't sure if it was really going to work that way or not.
Sandy, I was just checking. I think Amanda, I don't see her on here.
Okay.
She might have checked out. As far as I know, so I'm kind of taking over here. Amanda's going to go on maternity leave in like a week, so I'm transitioning into this role here. I just got back off of paternity leave.
I
so,
know, man. You guys,
yeah.
It must be something in the water.
Yes, we've been busy. But as far as I know, the emails I've read between Amanda and our fiscal secretary, I think we have everything straightened out between us and Unit 14, which is with the Keenwall, what we've been working between ourselves, getting reimbursed. So I think we have, as far as I know, all of our receipts that have totaled up to $1,000 for the grant have been processed, as far as I know. We also got a donation from Hy-Vee as well to help us, and we're going to have to purchase some more compost to fill up our beds again. But fiscally, that's it. We look to be okay.
Okay. I just wanted to, if anybody was having, because the idea was initially, and the way I understood, again, I'm not as familiar with the SNAP-Ed part of things. You'll hear this several times, but initially the thought was that this project would be part of the local SNAP-Ed budget, and then this local would be reimbursed by the state SNAP-Ed. So that was my understanding. So I just wanted to hear if anybody was having, problems, or if that didn't make sense, or does that seem like that's still a good goal? Well, I guess if we don't hear anything, then we'll assume that that's true. Okay, well, maybe that is fine. So does anybody
when does that money have to be spent by?
September 30th was my understanding, because I think they're October 1. I think the fiscal year's a little different, so it ends September 30th.
Right. Okay.
Brenda, I would tell you that we probably should by the middle of September because of logistics and stuff.
Yeah, good point.
SNAP really needs to be done and quickly turned around. Okay. So if you're thinking of doing anything, it would be, I would say, mid-September.
Okay.
And please keep me informed because of our situation fiscally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good point. So we'll say September 15th, at least by September 15th. Okay.
Because sometimes, and the reason why I bring this up is if the master gardener is paying for it, the coordinators or whoever else, and they're kind of changing it over, your fiscal people have to have time to be able to process that.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah, it has to be dated before October 1st, so they like to have a couple weeks.
Okay,
so,
very good.
Thanks.
Very good. Thanks. And anybody have any big ta-da they want to share? Instead of a to-do list, we have ta-da lists around here. Something that worked well. I know you've already given your report, so.
I'll say, Sandy, the Japanese beetles didn't eat all of the beans, so we did get some beans this year.
Haven't they been crazy this year?
Pretty bad. Yeah, so our program last week is going to be our plan for next year with the Japanese beetles, and so we talked about Japanese beetles for about an hour. And we could have gone on longer, but we had to cut it off for our rest of our meeting. But yeah, Japanese beetles, not really a ta-da, but we did have something survive.
That learning opportunity. Now, when you say you have the programs now, is that with the volunteers themselves, or is that? I know you were having those regular, but they were kind of open to the public, though, weren't they?
Yeah, they're primarily with the volunteers. We did put it in the paper, listing the different programs that we're going to have. And we've gotten a handful of folks to show up to the programs. We have a couple community volunteers that are fairly regular attendees, and then we've had a few more people show up. But otherwise, it's mostly master gardeners.
Okay, great, good. Well, Maddie, you want to finish up with your call to arms here? I guess not. I won't say call to arms, but
please follow us on Twitter. We have 30-some Twitter followers. So we need more, please, if you are on Twitter. Or if you're feeling pretty brave and you're like, I should sign up for Twitter just to follow the Illinois Master Gardeners. I would appreciate that.
Oh, and you can put on your calendar for next year that August 8th is National Sneak Some Zucchini on Your Neighbor's Porch Day.
I put that on our Facebook page, and people loved that. That
Absolutely.
was so good. I mean, I was rolling when I read it, and so I was like, yeah, the Master Gardeners need to share that. And I mean, I saw people, and they were like, that was so cute. It's like, I know, I didn't even know about that. So that was awesome.
Okay, very good. Because as we go along, there's other things that get shared on those. But as we go along, what we really want to do is also start highlighting more and more what's going on with this collaboration between SNAP-Ed and Master Gardeners, and the importance of having this fresh fruits and vegetables available to the pantries, and kind of connecting all the dots. So thank you all. So does anybody have any other questions or comments, concerns? I didn't happen to look to see when our next meeting is, but Maddie, do you happen to know that off the top of your head? Well, we'll remind you, I'm sure. We have the next couple of meetings already set, so those should be on your calendar. So anything else anybody wants to ask about, or otherwise we will go from there.
I think your next one is September 18th at 2
you.
p.m.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.